Navigating spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US. What you need to know. IMG with equals 150 height equals 150 alt equals Rachel Wolfson SRC equals https / Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2023/12 /screenshot 2023 12:40 at 9:42 p.m. on 150 zone 50. PNG class equals im fluid im circle loading equals auto Rachel Wolfson last updated January 12, 2024 5:12 EST 7 min read. Disclosure. Crypto is a high-risk asset class. This article is provided for informational purposes and does not constitute investment advice. By using this website, you agree to our terms and conditions. We may utilize affiliate links within our content and receive commission. IM with equals 1200 height equals 832. SRC equals https /Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2024/1/1,705,072,577 171,64310 f. PNG class equals attachment post thumbnail size post thumbnail WP post image alt equals decoding equals async SRC set equals https /Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2024/1/1,705,072,577 171,64310 f. PNG 1200 WA. https /Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2024/1/1,705,072,577 171,64310 f. 300x 208 PNG 300 WA. https /Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2024/1/1,705,072,577 171,64310 f. 1924x 710 PNG 1924 https /Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2024/1/1,705,072,577 171,64310 f. 768x 532 PNG 768 WA. https /Cryptonews. com/WP content /upload /2024/1/1,705,072,577 171,64310 f. 150x 104 PNG 150 sizes equals max width 1200x 100 WA. 1200x /source. Adobe stock in 2013, an entity affiliated with the Winklevoss twins sent the first application to the United States Securities and Exchange Commission SEC to create a spot Bitcoin BTC exchange-traded fund ETF. The SEC officially approved spot Bitcoin ETFs on January 10 this year. It has taken over 10 years for spot Bitcoin ETFs to be approved in the U.S., resulting in a newfound interest in ETFs. Many individuals are now wondering what an ETF is and how the financial product can be used to buy Bitcoin. What are ETFs? Yesha Yadav, professor of law and associate dean at Vanderbilt Law School, told Cryptonews that an ETF has rapidly come to represent a popular and versatile investment innovation within securities markets. According to Yadav, the basics behind ETFs are fairly straightforward. She said in an ETF, investors put their money into a fund in return for shares in this fund. Returns on these shares are determined by particular products that a fund tracks, such as basket of stocks, bonds, certain commodities, or even a particular investment strategy. For example, a bond ETF will deliver returns to fundholders based on the interest income being generated by its basket of bonds. Yadav added that the major innovation behind an ETF, which distinguishes it from a typical mutual fund, is that an ETF's shares are traded on a stock exchange like a normal stock. This helps make ETFs very attractive to investors who can move in and out of ETF shares smoothly and generally at relatively low cost, said Yadav. She further remarked that because ETFs are traded like stocks, they are regulated by the SEC. This is important to point out, as both retail and institutional U.S. investors for the first time have access to regulated Bitcoin. Moreover, because Bitcoin can now be bought or sold via familiar brokerages and held by individuals saving for retirement to hedge funds, spot BTC ETFs will likely be a way to increase mainstream adoption of crypto. It's also worth mentioning that ETFs have an enormous footprint within U.S. securities markets. According to State Street Global Advisors, ETFs had a monumental month in the U.S. in November last year, with assets climbing to a record $7.65 trillion. The difference between futures and spot ETFs. In 2021, the first Bitcoin futures ETF was approved by the SEC in the U.S. ProShares Bitcoin Strategy ETF was listed as the first exchange-traded fund, allowing U.S. investors direct exposure to cryptocurrency futures. While notable, there are key differences between a futures and spot ETF. Yadav said, a spot Bitcoin ETF is one that tracks the value of Bitcoin. Returns are governed by the changing value of the underlying Bitcoin. The spot ETF for Bitcoin will directly hold a pool of BTC. In the case of a Bitcoin futures ETF, investors take exposure on the performance of the Bitcoin derivatives rather than just the spot. A spot ETF versus a futures ETF can provide varying performance for investors, especially in the context of commodities such as Bitcoin. For added context, Bloomberg ETF analyst James Seyffart told Cryptonews that a spot Bitcoin ETF is just a fund that trades on an exchange like a typical stock, but will hold spot Bitcoin. So buying a share of these ETFs will give you exposure to Bitcoin, he said. Compared to a futures ETF, Seyffart explained that these types of products hold monthly Bitcoin futures contracts. He said they have to sell the current month every single month after, which can lead to poor performance due to the nature and friction in constantly rolling those contracts, particularly when the contract you are selling is a lower price than the one you are buying. You end up selling low and buying high over and over again. According to Seyffart, this process has led the leading Bitcoin futures ETF to underperform spot Bitcoin by 15.8% in 2023. However, he believes that the Bitcoin futures ETF is a great trading vehicle for short and even medium-term exposure, but warns that frictions can add up over time. All things considered, the approval of a Bitcoin futures ETF helped pave the way for the 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs that began trading on January 11, which include highly credible institutional players like BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust IBIT-O, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust GBTC, Valkyrie Bitcoin Fund BRRR-O, and others. Lee Wald, chief executive officer of Valkyrie, told Cryptonews that Valkyrie's spot Bitcoin ETF will be available to U.S. investors through their brokerage and investment accounts. Any investor will be able to purchase shares of our ETF, which will be available for trading on the Nasdaq, she said. Wald added that due to heightened demand for access to Bitcoin, she expects upwards of $400 million in assets to flow into Valkyrie's ETF during the first few weeks of trading. Wald's prediction may be accurate, as it's been reported that Bitcoin spot ETFs have already seen $4.6 billion in volume during the first day of trading. Although impressive, it's important to understand that investing in a spot Bitcoin ETF introduces counterparty risk. Perian Boring, founder and chief executive officer of the Chamber of Digital Commerce, told Cryptonews that investors rely on the ETF issuer to accurately track the performance of the underlying asset Bitcoin. If the issuer encounters financial difficulties or mismanages the fund, it can impact the ETF's value and the investor's returns, she said. Spot ETF trading fees and why investors may favor GBTC. While the spot ETF funds are expected to bring billions of dollars of fresh capital into Bitcoin, it's important to note that fees are associated. In an effort to attract investors, many of the firms offering spot ETFs have announced low initial management fees, with BlackRock's iShares ETF charging 0.12% for the first 12 months or first $5 billion of inflows, and the Invesco Galaxy ETF waiving its fee entirely for the first 6 months or $5 billion. Interestingly, it's been reported that the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust GBTC led trading volume on January 11, even with the highest trading fee. According to the Grayscale team January 12 newsletter, GBTC was the most actively traded Bitcoin ETF on January 11, with a total of $2.32 billion in value on NYSE Arca. The post also noted that CBTC was the most actively traded commodity ETF across U.S. markets. Brian Dixon, chief executive officer of Off the Chain Capital, an investment fund specializing in digital assets, told Cryptonews that he thinks there are huge implications associated with Grayscale's ETF product, noting that it has a first-mover advantage compared to BlackRock, Fidelity, and other providers. He said Grayscale has an estimated 618,000 Bitcoins in its ETF. As BlackRock, Fidelity, and other providers go into the market to secure their supply for their ETFs, this will inherently drive up the price of Bitcoin, creating a tremendous enhancement of Grayscale's ETF value and assets under management AUM. Dixon added that even with some level of attrition to Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF, which is to be expected as some investors may switch for lower fees, the dollars flowing into competitive products will continue to push up the value of Grayscale's AUM. History shows us with ETFs that the biggest and most liquid ETFs attract the majority of the AUM. As of today, this is exactly what Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF provides, he said. Why spot Bitcoin ETFs are monumental for the U.S. While there has been buzz regarding the impact spot ETFs are having on the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, there are many other factors that make this a watershed moment. For instance, Seyfarth mentioned that it's rare for ETFs to create a new bridge to a new asset. He said, the last time something like this happened it was a gold ETF in 2004. Before that was equities and bonds. You can make arguments that there were others, but this is really the next one I'm watching. It's the first digital asset ETF, and it shows both the flexibility and benefits of the ETF wrapper. Seyfarth added that he thinks there is a greater than 50% chance, maybe 70%, that a spot ethereum ETF is next. However, he noted that any other digital asset is likely much farther behind and unlikely to be approved anytime soon. Dixon further noted that as the Bitcoin ETFs expand adoption of the asset, the U.S. may enter a geopolitical race for countries to capture Bitcoin on their balance sheet. As countries continue to educate themselves on Bitcoin, I believe there will be a race to acquire as much as possible for their reserves. If Bitcoin becomes the monetary base layer for the planet in the future, the country that holds the most Bitcoin holds the most control, he said. According to Nasdaq, as of October of 2023, the U.S. government is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin with over 200,000.